Brothers and sisters, as I was preparing to give my speech for November 11th, the original Armistice Day, later recognized as Veterans Day, most often not as recognized anymore. What a shame. Nonetheless, as I was preparing for the event, 2 Minutes for World Peace, I've become inspired, and I'd like to share some thoughts with you guys, and I'd really like to start having some discussions about these. So admittedly, I haven't refined my message. I'm going to refer to a bunch of notes, but it's driving me nuts that I can't stop seeing this now, and I think it's time for us to make some changes. What if solving the world's problems was easy? What if the problem was also the solution? Aristotle's words resonate true even today. A life not examined is not worth living. The inference, of course, is that a life that once examined might be worth living. Another from Socrates, as within is so without. As I worked on myself to recover from a decade of alcoholism, I examined my life and I saw my individual evolution from a redneck nationalist American into a proud humanitarian and environmental activist. I also examined the life of our society, and I urge you to do the same. In the meantime, please ask yourself some of these questions. I just hope I can articulate the patterns I've seen so that you can try and unsee them as well. Can we agree that throughout time, history has shown us as people to try and control and dominate one another? First it was by gender, then it was by God, then country, language, color. And I think we can all agree history has given us reasons to distrust one another. It's also shown that humans can be capable of the most atrocious evils imaginable. But can we also agree that once we get to know each other, the differences between our gender, our God, our country, our language, and color, they usually fade into the background? Once we listen to each other and our past differences, we can also see that we are all the same. We are both evil and good. Inside every one of us, we have the same internal drives to give and receive love, to give and receive comfort and security for ourselves and those around us. We all hunger the same, bleed the same, and cry the same too. We also love, smile, and feel joy the same ways as well. Why do we still have so many separations between us after all these years? Especially in the U.S. Haven't we all benefited from the exposure to each other's cultures, foods, languages, and traditions? We're a dysfunctional family in America, but we are truly a melting pot. Haven't we been exposed to the knowledge of superfoods around the globe like acai and goji berries, super grains like quinoa and chia, or the nectars of agave, and even coconut water? Dude, I live in Spokane, Washington, and I've got coconut water. Haven't we incorporated other languages into our vernacular expressions? Haven't we taken on each other's traditions and customs to some degree? Haven't we seen that we can almost get along? But after all this time, there's still one judgment. After all the progress we've made, the judgment still exists of money. What if we lived in a world where there was no incentive to withhold technology or science from each other? What if we lived in a world where knowledge was freely distributed through the people using the technology that we've collectively put into place? What if universities again became cities in which to gather and discuss the problems of humanity collectively with the brightest of minds, places where the brightest can debate and share knowledge theories for the purposes of human advancement? What if we expanded the availability of information and knowledge across the world so those undeveloped nations can teach themselves and have a chance to build their own products and their own economies? What if the simple solution to our addiction epidemic in our prison populations was simply to return hope to the people? What if none of us felt so hopeless about our situation and need for money that we would resort to hurting another human being just to provide comfort, or maybe even out of anger or frustration? Why do we put our business executives into positions where they have to decide which is better? Release news of technology or science that could harm their business, or withhold the information from the public in order to meet the obligations to their shareholders, you and I, thus keeping or improving their own jobs to provide for their families? Why do we have incentives in place to push pharmaceuticals to each other, manipulate our food production, manipulate our water as a product, manipulate our dietary information, and as a result, our health care? Why as a people do we still continue to consume war supplies? I thought the idea of capitalism, if the need doesn't exist, the business will go away. Why do we keep creating a need for that business? Why do we have others of us in our society presenting science and arguments to cover up and often lie about information, or finding loopholes in the rules that we created and accepted, only to avoid harming those businesses, often at our own human environmental harms? Why do we have brothers and sisters of humanity fleeing the country of their ancestors right now? Not because of Mother Nature, but because man's oil prices dropped, and some other brothers and sisters managing investments chose to devalue the dollar of those people. And as I understand it, they're also in a struggle for domination over resources and control, and so other fascists are raising the prices in that economy. These people have done nothing wrong. And I hear we're sending troops to greet them. I pray it's with open arms. Originally I asked, why do we accept this? But the truth is obvious. We were born into this. This is a society that was developed and built over time. You and I, if you're listening to my words, we were born into most of this. And like a fish born into water, they don't know. We didn't know we were walking around in air until we were taught that. And I think just the same way we've been walking around both as slaves and slave owners in this society that we've created. And we just didn't see it. But I've seen it. And now I can't unsee it. And now I want the rest of us to start talking about it. I hope that you see it. I hope my words are connecting. I'm going to continue. What if we didn't go to the jobs that we often hate, selling ourselves products we often know are toxic or at the very least unhealthy? What if we didn't have people working at factory farms where we murder billions of birds and mammals for unnecessary consumption and waste? What if we grew food for people instead of food? What if people and planetary resources were viewed as more than just expenses on an accounting spreadsheet? What if we lived in a world where we didn't go to jobs just to make money, but to contribute to a better world? Just because we took advantage of ourselves in the past doesn't mean that we have to continue to accept it for the future, does it? How many of us would willingly go to an impoverished area to build hospitals or schools or libraries, but just can't afford to because we can't afford to leave our jobs? How many of us would willingly lower our own standard of living or lifestyle if we really thought that we could make a difference for another? I know I would. And since I know we're all the same, I know you probably would too. What if we simply told the banks we no longer needed their services and that all debts were eliminated? Our governments and our economists, we've got some brilliant minds alive today. Probably the same folks who confused us with their derivative marketing or whatever the hell it was that collapsed our economy a few years back. Those guys are smart. They can figure out a new money for us. Once new money is established, we can keep usury laws, allow banks to provide a service that they were intended, but we can eliminate the gambling with people's livelihoods and mortgages in the stock market. What if there was a way to keep capitalism but find a fair exchange for labor? With free education, our people in difficult, stressful jobs could take a break for a while to a less stressful job, go push a broom for a little while and make some coffee without worrying about how to provide for their families. And alternatively, someone who's starting out pushing brooms or serving coffee, maybe they've got an urge to help, who knows, agriculture, help animals, help people, anything. With free education, they could learn how, and then they could go be mentored by someone else. What if we could pick jobs based on interest rather than just whatever's available that might serve a need to pay a bill? Can we agree our capitalist-driven society has served its purpose in its current model long enough? How many of us would like to start this society over again? When we live in a world where 1% of us control over 50% of the global money, and 70% of us in the working age of the population only account for 3% of the wealth. I think there's something wrong with this picture. Please, do you agree? Why do we plant, I love this one, why do we plant our irreplaceable time and labor to farm just enough money for us to barely make it? Yet we harvest money for others to be stored in offshore accounts or being spent on often secret capitalist ventures that will likely be consequential to other humans in nature. If we also look back at at least even our American histories, the 1900s were certainly a boom to our industrial revolution, resulted in America becoming what it is today. But let's not forget, at the turn of the 19th century, we had children working in mines, we had slave wages for our steel workers and inhumane conditions. We polluted and just completely ruined our environment. The good thing from that, though, was over the last century, we've seen more and more people shifting their consciousness, starting to pay attention to what's important. And we have millions of nonprofit organizations across the planet standing up for environmental and humanitarian issues. But the problem is we're standing up in a society that it doesn't recognize the value of people or planets. So, what I would like to ask us all to do, I believe it's incumbent upon every single one of us in the free nation, in the free world. We need to stand up together, individually, collectively, together, united, and demand as a people. No more domination, no more control. There is no human being who is superior or inferior to another human being. And we need to insist upon that and demand that. And then I'd ask that we demand accountability from both our corporate leaders and our government leaders. No more withholding of science, no more withholding of news or information or even conspiracies. It's time to release the information to the public. It's time to take control of our dollars. We need to return money back to being the tool that it was intended to be. Money was simply intended to be a symbol, a representation of value, value of service or goods to be used in exchange to develop a commerce. It wasn't made for us to be farmed. What the heck are we doing, guys? Can we please agree to change? We need to remember that we have brothers and sisters outside of the United States, outside of the free world, who are not able to have these conversations. As a people, we've made enough mistakes. The key to success is simple. You learn from your mistakes, you make a choice to make a difference, and you make a choice to change. It's how I changed my life. Can we examine the life of our society? Can we consider, let's stop fighting. Let's stop fighting to keep this dysfunctional society continuing. Our government leaders can take back control of the money. And as individuals, we can refuse to acknowledge any government, any leaders who refuse to recognize the people and the planet. But every time we fill up a tank of gas right now, we're supporting the oil company, taking the land from the indigenous peoples. They do a good job of saying they're doing good. But let's not forget, they're men and women. They're like you and I. They live in a society where money shows value. Every one of us wants to be valued. So, can we please start the discussion? Can we please start agreeing to change? God bless you all. Thank you for listening to my words. Live without fear. Namaste.